Guys, we have breaking news.
Finally, China hits back.
Yeah, it's 125%.
But it's still lower than USA.
Yeah, so USA's tariff is 145% on Chinese good, and then China put 125% on US goods. So what's your initial reaction to this?
I don't know, it gets ugly. They're just doing numbers game.
Yeah, so this is definitely a trade war now. I don't think Trump's going to back down. I don't think so.
No, it's gonna go.
China's not backing down.
No.
And so this is the question is, are we looking at a divorce? Or just don't trade with each other anymore. It's laughable, it's sad, because it does hurt a lot of people, but it's like crazy that it's happening so fast, I think is what.
It's so fast and it's kind of crazy. You know, I don't know what's gonna happen after this.
Okay, so let me read the statement from Beijing. They're coming out swinging. Basically, they're saying China's not afraid. Here's the quote here. The successive imposition of excessively high tariffs on China by the U.S. has become nothing more than a numbers game with no real economic significance. That's from China's Commerce Ministry. They have more. It gets interesting. It merely further exposes the U.S. practice of weaponizing tariffs as a tool of bullying and coercion, turning itself into a joke. Man, China ain't playing with these words. We got more. There are no winners in a trade war, and yet going against the world will only lead to self-isolation, which we already know this. Trump and the USA are just going alone, right? They're becoming isolated. They also say this, for over 70 years, China's development has relied on self-reliance and hard work, never on handouts from others, and it is not afraid of any unjust suppression. So this is my reaction to this. So say what you want about the Chinese Communist Party. Like, I'm not a supporter of their party, but I'll tell you, they write pretty good speeches. And I used to live in China. And it's just part of Chinese culture to, like, language is really important, you know, and they've been playing a lot of like philosophical stuff on their news networks and in their writings. It's just, it's, you know, they're calling USA a joke. They're saying we don't, you know, ask for handouts because Trump just insults other countries all the time. You know, like they'll use words like, we allow you to get rich. Like, you know, we're letting you do it, or you know, you can't get rich without us kind of stuff. It's just, it's insulting, you know, it's not, it's just, it's that ugly American arrogance, you know?
I told you it's just ugly, the orange American.
Ugly orange American arrogance, right? So anyway, we just want to give you the breaking news. We have a longer discussion, and let's just jump right in. So 145% tariffs on where?
China.
On China. Can you believe that? And I don't know why we don't just put it to 200 or...
Maybe tomorrow.
Yeah, maybe tomorrow. Or 300. People have actually been making jokes. It's like an auction, you know, where like, do I hear 300 or do I hear 400? Oh, the person in the corner.
I can hear you. What? 500?
I mean, it's so ridiculous at this point. And this is what we have to deal with on a daily basis. Now, Trump, who is the president, he claims he's the best business person in the world, that he has all these friends everywhere.
But he's not. He bankrupted 6 companies.
6 companies, and he's not talking to the key person he needs to be talking to. Who's that?
President Xi.
Yeah, so basically, why aren't we talking to President Xi? Well, President Xi's busy. Donald's trying to call him on the phone, and President Xi's not picking up the phone. Where's Xi?
She's gonna meet the Cambodia, Malaysia, Vietnam president.
And that shows you where China's priorities are, right? You guys get it.
What's that? It'll be the first time he's visiting abroad this year.
Yeah. First time visiting abroad. He's not going to USA. He's not picking up the phone with Trump. He's going to Vietnam, Cambodia, was it Malaysia?
Yeah.
Yeah. And if you've been following the story, basically Trump is pissing off everyone around the world. I mean, basically. And it's kind of funny because you're talking about comments on Korea websites.
Yeah. Normally, we don't really cheer for the China, but these days, all the comments, okay, just China, you're doing a good job, you're strong, and you're cheering for you. That's these days.
And it's kind of the same on our channel. Everyone's saying the same thing of like, I've never thought I would be cheering for China. It's like, it's kind of weird because guys, like, I'm an American citizen, right? I served in the United States Navy. I'm not like, you know, propagandist where like I love China or anything like that. It's just that you can't really cheer for Trump. And it's also kind of similar situation if you're, say, a Russian national, Russian passport, you can't really cheer for Putin. It's not great. Also, you could say the same for Israel. Like if I'm Israeli, I'm not cheering for Netanyahu. It's the same kind of stuff. So don't think because that people suddenly like are supporting China in the sense of stand up to Trump, that suddenly we all love China and hate USA. It's not really like that. World's kind of complicated, right? But I'll just say this: clearly, Trump's just putting the USA in a really bad spot. And
one good thing is it makes everyone else his friend.
Yeah. Yeah, so the big winner out of this, and the way Trump people keep talking is like, China, you have no one else to sell stuff to. You have to sell the USA, or you're gonna have no business at all. That's like how they talk. But it's, you know, the thing that people keep saying with the Trump people is like everything we say accusation, like when you accuse someone of something, is a confession. So basically, what it would mean is that like USA is gonna have no one to trade with if you're pissing everyone off, you know. And now China's building relationships with other, you know, countries around the world. Now, there is something to mention though, like for the average country, we'll say like a Singapore or an Australia or, you know, whatever.
Neutral, right?
Yeah. Most countries want to go neutral. You know, back say during the Cold War situation where countries felt like you had to choose a Russia side or a USA side. Yeah, but well, you're right. You don't have to do anything you want because you're your own country. You can decide whatever you want. But back then, that's how countries are sort of put in that awkward position of like, you know, choose a side kind of thing. You know, I hope we're past that mentality of where you have to be, you know, for us or against us kind of stuff. But in this day and age, and I don't know if that'll probably be a big issue in the Korean election coming up because you guys are picking a president soon.
Yeah, but we're not really talking about that right now.
That's not even in the table. Well, so the thing that's interesting, and this adds to the instability, is I think Australia's having an election. So Korea is too, and you guys correct me if I'm wrong, but someone in the comments mentioned Australia. They're kind of deciding. You know, the candidates are like, "Oh, I'll be, you know, strong this way, or I'll be," and that's the issue right now is like who's going to stand up to Trump. That was the issue in Canada. Who would you know be strongest against Trump, and even the more like right wing conservative candidates were even like, "Hey, we're going to stand up for Canada and against Trump." So Trump is definitely unifying the rest of the world, and you know we laugh about it, but it's actually frankly really sad, and that's sort of where we are. Now on top of that, Trump and their team often lie about numbers. So they always say like Chinese people don't buy any of our American stuff, whatever. Well, there's an interesting story of what's going on. What's going on with that?
They're gonna stop buying U.S. film.
Yeah,
but China is the second biggest market for Hollywood.
So remember, whenever Trump says, you know, we have this crazy trade imbalance, et cetera, they're not including everything. Guys, movies is a massive business, and even now the biggest star in the world could be what?
Tom Cruise?
Yeah, and how's he feeling?
Yeah, maybe he's crying right now because they're gonna not showing his movie in China probably.
Yeah, because you guys, you know, the new Mission Impossible is coming out. I'm actually looking forward to see it myself. And this happens occasionally in China where a big film won't go there.
Yeah.
The last time I remember a really big one was the Batman movie, because there was this scenes where Batman was in Hong Kong, and Batman was like fighting the Hong Kong police, and then China doesn't want to show that anyone fights the police, which is kind of interesting, right? Or anyone's above the law, basically, so they can't show that kind of movie, and so they missed out on that stuff. So anytime there's any, and I think you know what? There was another one, Barbie.
Why?
It was the way they drew the world map. I think that like China didn't agree with all of the way the borders were drawn or stuff like that. China's really has a real sensitive topics and that kind of stuff, which I get it, right? Now this also goes into the point of like, just because we're saying, you know, at this stage in the game, some people are cheering for Xi, it doesn't mean we support China. Like, I totally don't, right? So there's that. The other thing, too, I want to mention with this stuff is they made a statement. This is from China. This is what they said. They said, the wrong action of the U.S. government to abuse tariffs on China will inevitably further reduce the domestic audience favorability towards American films, right? We will follow the market rules, respect the audience choice, and moderately reduce the number of American films imported. Now, when the Chinese government basically starts saying negative things about a certain company or a certain country, what do the Chinese consumers usually do?
They just boycott right away.
Yeah, they're I don't know, they do that all the time. No, seriously, I'm not sure like how they get the message out so quickly. I mean, they probably just put it on TV and
TV
tell
and
people what to
social
do it.
media and TikTok.
Yeah, but Chinese people are really good at propaganda. So I'll give you an example. When I was in China, it was during the Olympic time, right? And they were running the torch because it was hosted in Beijing, and they were running the torch through France. And I think there might have been like some issue where French people were boycotting the Chinese Olympics. It wasn't like all of France; it was just like a couple stuff. And so then the Chinese government got their people and their consumers to get really mad at France. And so then like Chinese people would throw rocks at the cauliflower. I remember this. It was like kind of crazy. But people do this kind of stuff in China. You just get people really mad. I hope they don't throw rocks at like movie theaters and stuff like that. But I don't think they'll throw rocks at Tom Cruise because I don't think it would go that far. But I just want to say though, it does matter.
Yeah, but the point is, the Trump says, we only buy yours. But think about this movie industry. The China buy a lot of Hollywood movies, but USA, are you watching Chinese movie? You're not.
That's a good example. So that's a clear imbalance. And actually, Australia has the same sort of situation where Australia was like, "Why are you putting tariffs on us? Like we buy your stuff. You don't even really buy Australian stuff at all. Like, what are you talking about, right? Because there's this, no disrespect to Australia. I'm just saying, just in that relationship, it's not really.
Yeah, it shows the White House number is all nonsense.
Right. It doesn't include social media stuff, which is big money. Like talk about Google or Facebook,
financial stuff.
JP Morgan, Visa, MasterCard, whatever. Like there's a bunch of things that are not included in their numbers. Sure, if you want to talk about, we'll say bananas or cars or something like that, maybe the U.S. buys more bananas from Mexico than Mexico buys from the USA or whatever, right? Or shrimp or whatever. But a lot of these trade imbalances, they're misleading. It may not include also, say, Chinese students that come to the USA, pay full tuition, to contribute to the economy. There's a bunch of stuff that's not included. Also want to mention, we have an inside sort of peek. It was the Washington Post had a really good article about what's going on in the White House. Now I'll explain it. Last week, they were taking meetings with foreign leaders. How many? Who knows? They keep changing numbers. I don't know what it is. And I guess they were on the phone also, calls. How many, again, we don't know. But the gist that I was getting is that the Trump people on the trade team were not authorized to really negotiate at all. So basically they were just like asking for leaders, what's your best offer?
Yeah, so basically they don't have anything.
Yeah, they didn't have any plan. And so it sounds like, well, we'll see, because the foreign leaders were asking or foreign trade reps, better way to say it, were asking the U.S. trade reps, what do you expect? What do you want? Which is a reasonable question. Like what are you expecting to get from us? Like what, and then the Trump people wouldn't say anything.
Yeah,
it's like, how do you, there was no negotiation. What's that?
And plus, for example, in Korea, we already signed up for the new military money. We already signed
a deal.
But they want to negotiate again.
Yeah.
They basically want to break their contract.
Yeah. Australia's been complaining about that. Canada's been complaining the same thing. Mexico. A lot of countries have that same exact complaint, is that they'll say something like, we already have free trade. Why are you putting tariffs on us? Your numbers are completely lies. There's a commenter that said in Malaysia it was the same thing, that they people looked at the numbers in Malaysia and were like, these numbers aren't correct. And I think that's probably going to end up being every country on Trump's list of numbers that were like, the numbers don't make sense. Because what they did was they said like trade, and then they also included currency manipulation. So you can kind of make stuff. Well, so currency manipulation is real, but how you measure that exactly isn't necessarily so obvious. And then you're playing with which categories do you include in your numbers. But I mean, the Trump people just make crap up all the time. That's what they do. So anyway, last week there was no negotiations, even though Trump's supposed to be a great business person. And I want to make this clear to people who love Trump. Trump's not sitting on every single one of these meetings, or he's not taking all of these calls. It's not like that. They were saying they were splitting up the teams on so meaning that one person doesn't talk to every country, right? It's impossible. So they have to split up the teams based on experience with prior countries, etc. And it's all based on a relationship, which Trump is just like treats people really awful. So
Yeah, basically, he just said kiss my, butt.
right.
So when I watched that, I felt like, is that real? Is that
Oh.
AI video? But it was literally him said that. So he's treating other countries like you're like servant.
Yeah.
So who likes to talk to negotiate those kind of person?
And people have been saying too, it also feels like he's sort of a gangster kind of thing,
Yeah.
how he treats people. So this is where in China, if you look at their social media, it's kind of been interesting lately. They've been saying, hey, to developing nations, we're giving you zero tariffs. Look at, USA who's taxing you or whatever. And just like, it's kind of an easy choice for developing nations of which country to work with at that point because,
And,
what's that?
And it's better just you wait for 5 years till he's gone.
Yeah, because for this whole thing to work, Trump's saying, okay, we're going to bring all these factory jobs supposedly back to the USA, right? Which I think is bogus. So I'll give you an example. The Uniqlo CEO gave an interview recently. And if you don't know Uniqlo, big clothing brand, we like it's good. It's a high quality clothes for low cost, basically. But the CEO has basically said, if we're not going to build in China, we're going to, build factories in Vietnam, and we're not going to build clothing factories in USA. It's just not. His quote was, the U.S. Economy is the information and finance. It's not a clothes making or factory nation. It's not necessarily good or bad per se. It's just how the countries develop. And then the other issue as well is like any company considering building in the USA, like it could take you a decade. It could take you 10 years to build a factory. Let's say you build a fast factory, that's going to take you like 5 years, right? So Trump's going to be gone soon. Why would you do all this investment? And then also the wealthy, they're watching the market crash. So you're just like, I don't really feel good about the future. Credit markets are tightening. The bond market is selling off the same time the stock market is selling off. I don't know where all this money is going to come from, supposedly to build all of these new factories and supposedly have them up and running by tomorrow, or in Elon Musk time, next week or next year, whatever they're going to say. So all the stuff that Trump is saying is smoke and mirrors. He's a terrible business person, and it's showing right now as you're seeing China gaining more influence around the world, which is, in my opinion, not a good thing. I'd rather have the U.S. to be a leader. To be perfectly frank, I'm American. I think that the USA, should be a leader. But the way Trump's doing is he's destroying our position in the world. So that's what's up. I want to hear your thoughts. I appreciate your time. And we'll catch y'all next time. So bye.